and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this convention. Second time, Ken and myself, this is our second panel here this year. And the topic of this panel is driving innovation in the dynamic healthcare market. I will present the panelists in a few moments, but I will divide this presentation into three main areas. First, we're going to discuss the relation of the companies you're working with to Israel. So you can speak a little bit about your companies, but they're relatively really known. So I think the Israel connection is more important in terms of this convention. The second, we'll discuss about innovation in Israel. And I think that will be the less meaningful one because we have heard Startup Nation and we've known all the stories. And the interesting part is how you make this innovation into products that actually benefit patients and become a viable business model. I think that this is a weakness in Israel. While we are very, and we all know the story about coming in the army, pictures, private success, and all of those things. At the end of the day, certainly in healthcare, there is not a great big number of products that are based on Israeli technology. Certainly in medtech, but also in pharma, most of the known agents have been developed back in the 60s or early 70s. We haven't seen big growth since. And so I'd like to see how we can change this paradigm, bring more products and potentially more companies out of Israel, and that will be the main part of the section. So let's say I'm Geiger. I'm from Accelmed, which is a medical device investment firm out of Israel. We invest mainly in innovation in Israel, but also on a global basis in different other territories, mainly in the United States. Either direct investments or mostly more mature companies. Some of them serve as a platform to launch Israeli technologies to the marketplace. And so we are active. Most of our activity are this commercial, but most of my time is spent around the United States. So that's kind of the connection to this summit. Ken Stein, to my right, is the medical director of the CRM division of Boston Scientific. Ken was a prominent electrophysiologist at Weill Cornell before, and he switched heads from being a professor and a physician taking care of patients to creating innovation that will help patients. And helping patients in Boston is a market leader in cardiology, and CRM certainly that's an area of excellence. Simone Botti of Merck Serono is managing the innovation factory of Merck Serono as an activity in Israel. His experience in creating innovation was with brother Biomarker before, and is very experienced in taking technologies and bringing them to the market, both in medical, mostly in drug, but now more in the pharmaceutical side in Merck Serono. And then Bergman is the CEO of Schein, which is the world's largest medtech and dental distributor, selling many products of hundreds of companies, probably some of them from Israel, and I'm sure that Stan will share this experience with us. So without further ado, let's start just with others. So Ken, you'll be the first. And can you tell us about Boston's activity in Israel, mostly not about what you sell into the Israeli market, but what innovation you drive out of Israel?
Yeah, sure. And so Boston Scientific, I think just so you understand the scope of the company, is probably the world's largest cardiovascular nanotechnology company. We don't only do cardiology. Probably our two largest divisions would be interventional cardiology and stents and such. And that division has a history going back to Israel in the very first days of stents. CRM division, I'll tell you a funny story about our Israeli innovation there in a second, but also a wide variety of other divisions of the company in surgery, neuromodulation, women's health, and neurology. We've stayed very close to a number of startups in Israel. Actually, our last major acquisition, one that we announced in November, specific to CRM, was a electrophysiology ablation mapping and navigation company that was founded by two Israelis, but they actually built the company in the U.S. in Burlington, Massachusetts. So people don't think of it as an Israeli company.
So, good afternoon. As we said, I am running the
incubator of Merck Serono in Israel. You might know actually of Merck Serono here in the United States as EMD Serono. Merck Serono has a very long history of working with Israel. First of all, with Serono in the 1970s. Serono did something that was extremely innovative at the time. I don't think anybody has done that ever again. It decided to form a joint venture with the Technology Transfer Office of the Weizmann Institute of Science called IDS13, and it created a joint venture around the research of a number of scientists there. One of them was working on interferon beta. Out of this company that was called Interferon came Relief, which is one of the blockbusters of Serono for the treatment of multiple sclerosis. With this almost 40-year-old history of cooperation with the Weizmann Institute, also Evidux, which is one of the other blockbusters that Merck sells outside of the United States, came an idea of looking at the very early stage innovation that is coming from academic laboratories, not only at the Weizmann, but also all over Israel. And we decided to set up an innovation factory that would give a structure and also mentoring and finance to very early stage technology that is coming out of Israel. This initiative has started about 1.5 years ago, and the second part I will tell you more a little bit about now.
Good afternoon. So my company, Schein, is the largest provider of healthcare products to dentists, to physicians, and to veterinarians in their private practice. These private practices are generally SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises, where the practitioner has a clear understanding of the clinical aspects of the practice, but very often doesn't understand fully how to run the business. Of course, some of our customers are large, but generally our customers are looking to understand from us how to run a better business so that they can provide better clinical care. Sorry, I'm going to turn the question a little bit around. It's not, before I do that, we source a lot of products in Israel. We source diamonds that are used as burrs at the end of the drill, not something that we all enjoy. So, being in contact with the burrs come out of Israel.
We like diamonds.
Yes, yes. But these diamonds are not the nicest, but they're very good, high quality diamonds that we don't like looking at. So the other product that we source in Israel is sterilizers, and we source a number of infection control products. We're also the largest provider of dental products to Israelis and to Israeli dentists. But I don't think we are looking for the next high-tech breakthrough. Of course they exist, and they come out of Israel. What we are looking for is user-friendly products that are made to service the needs of our customers. The challenge we find with Israeli companies in our space is they come up with an idea that is a great idea, but somehow or another it doesn't match the needs of our customers. So I would suggest to Israeli companies that are interested in our space, in the physician, animal health, and dental space, is try to understand what the customer needs. And in our area, it's how can you help a practitioner run a better business so that they can provide better clinical care. And it's got to be simple. So I'll give you an example. One of our biggest relationships in Israel is with a company by the name of Bergman. They are, I think, the second largest, maybe even the largest, manufacturer of tabletop sterilizers. You know, in the dental office, these are the sterilizers that are next to the operatory where handpieces and various instruments are sterilized. Well, their products are very good, but they're not bleeding edge. And what still now people did is 10 years or 12 years ago, they came to America and they studied our industry. And they said, these products are good, and these products that may be very high tech, and we have some really revolutionary breakthroughs, maybe not ready for the market. Maybe this one is low tech, is reimbursement, maybe for another product that is not. Maybe high tech is no reimbursement. So my encouragement to Israeli entrepreneurs that are interested in our space, understand the market, Make sure that you really are in contact with the customer, you understand reimbursement, and that you build your products to the needs of the customers, even though there may be even greater technologies and better ideas available.
Thank you, Stan. The second part is the innovation part, so over to you, Ken. What part of innovation is driven from internal R&D in a company like Boston Scientific, or are you, as it seems, that you buy innovation from either Israeli, non-Israeli, or others? So either innovation within the corporate, or you feel that most of the innovation comes from external resource sources?
I mean, I'm agnostic, and so I can speak for the company. In other words, we put nearly $1 billion a year into internal R&D efforts, but we also have not hesitated to acquire external companies, and we've actually gone through a series of 6 major acquisitions in just the last year and a half. You know, and there are certain strengths and certain weaknesses, both to internal R&D as well as to external acquisition. I think, you know, particularly as we see the healthcare market changing, and you know, part of the issue here, right, is like a dynamic market. It's not always dynamic in ways that we like. The things that have traditionally worked for us through internal R&D, as well as the things that traditionally led to success for external partners, I think are changing. And I think it may very well be the case that it's going to be easier for smaller startups to be more nimble and adapt and generate the kinds of innovation that I think are going to be critical as we see how the healthcare market evolves over the next 5-10 years.
Simon, speaking of the innovations, you mentioned this experience Serono had back in the 70s, and there's interferon research that was done in Weizmann in the 60s, or late 60s, or early 70s. Accelmed is also a 60s research. Do you see innovation in pharma in Israel today?
Yes, I see a lot of innovation, and the most important thing to say is that the quantity of innovation is not the key. The most important thing about Israel is to see that it is an extremely concentrated and well-stocked sandbox for experiments in how to take something that comes out of an academic area and turn it into something that walks, talks, and speaks like something that you would see or you would want to buy as far as a pharma company is concerned. And so we are deploying across Israel a number of tools because of our history with licensing to access external innovation. It is, without a doubt, almost all pharma companies are deploying strategies to access external innovation because there is a realization that, especially at the very early stage, you cannot rely on your internal resources. So in Israel we have 3 major tools that we use. We have our classic business development tool that is looking for assets that are ready for in-licensing. But we also have the incubator and the venture capital fund. The venture capital fund and the incubator act as a normal venture capital fund. We invest strategically, and we invest like financial investors. We do not put any options on the companies that we invest in. But at the same time, what we do is we go extremely early. We go where normally other venture capitals would fear to tread. We go for things that in some cases when you don't have IP, we want to access the technology directly at the source from these scientists who are at the top of the game. But by accessing it at that stage, we realize that we need to start the dialogue very early. We need to shape what this company is going to be from the get-go. So with the incubator, we, together with the scientists and the founders, we developed a work plan from scratch. We developed a business case. We staff the company. We bring it into our own incubator and we give it structure. We give it all of the lab equipment that they need. We give them services as far as our internal IP council is concerned. And all of this allows this germ of innovation to develop into something that within a space of 2 to 3 years is something that any other venture capital firm will want to invest in, or any other pharma company might want to partner with. Because we imprint the DNA of a potential pharma partner in these companies from the beginning.
Let me land and discuss innovation. Does a company like Henry Schein good channel for innovative products? Can your sales team really sell innovation and medical sales of innovation, or it's more like what you mentioned, good quality in a good term, good, nice to be used products? Can you really be a channel for innovation? Is it even desirable?
Well, I don't, if you take the Belco, there's 8% of the companies and customers that are interested in products that are using in practice. There's maybe 5–10% on the other side that are looking for new technologies. They want to test them. Then there's the 10% that don't care. It's all about price. So for the 80% of the customers, dental, medical, and veterinary practitioners, we have products for them. And they are looking for products that can help them run a better practice. So within that, there are products such as practice management software, electronic medical records, the digitalization of X-ray, the digitalization of prosthetics. In other words, today, when you go to the dentist, there are ways other than to take an impression from the material, but you can take a scan, and then you can send that scan chairside to have the crown bridge milled, or send it to a lab. We bring out a lot of this technology. So the way we do it is probably very similar to the way Simone mentioned, and that is we partner. Actually, last year we did about $9 billion in sales, and about 35% of our sales were in one form or another a joint venture. So we believe that the best talent can be found and kept in some kind of an entrepreneurial way, in a joint venture way, and that's the way we drive a lot of our technology and innovation. So, of course, it is important to make sure that these products are at a point, from our point of view, where they can be sold and used. We're not early in technology investments.
Let me be a little bit blunt. Because I think the problem here is we're talking about innovation, not saying what we mean by innovation. Right? And I think that's dangerous. Because I think what innovation has to mean in the future needs to be very different from what we've thought of as innovative in the past. Right? In our industry of med tech, right, bringing out a new stent with a new polymer or a new drug to a new offering was considered innovation. And I think that that's progress, but I think that that's no longer innovation. Right? Our mission, right, in this field is literally right to heal the world, to improve outcomes for patients. And we live in a world today where in the United States, device companies are paying 2.3% excise tax over revenue, where the sequesters lead to a 2% Medicare cut in reimbursements effective within a month, where all of Western Europe is being subjected to austerities under major budget crunch, and where most of the world's population lives in regions where they don't have access to the technologies that already exist for patient care, again, whether that's drugs or devices. Right? So to me, going forward, innovation isn't just product iteration or a nice new gizmo. Right? Innovation has to be something that improves patient care. That's foundational. But that also radically affects the cost of providing care to patients, particularly in emerging nations, but I think that that's just as critical in Europe and the United States. And again, our engineers traditionally never looked at innovation. Right? They thought innovation was the shiny new gadget. And we need to recondition that to make innovation mean how we create an old gadget or a new gadget, but that radically improves the cost of healthcare delivery worldwide.
So, if you want to become even more radical about this, we are a pharmaceutical company that deals in ethical drugs. So, by definition, anything that comes out of our pipeline that the FDA approves is innovative, should be innovative. It's something that was not there before. But the most important thing is to understand that the cycles to bring this innovation to bear on patients is extremely long, and even if we are able to source the best science everywhere, most of the science, in the end, will not be translated into something that is important for a patient because it will be basically wrong. So innovation actually goes into doing organizational innovation in the way not only that you source breakthrough science, but that you bring it to bear into a cycle that becomes shorter, better focused, where things really can fail quickly, and where you can do this iteration of bringing things to clinical trials and to the market in the most efficient manner. Can start by really looking at biomarkers, stratifying your patients, looking for technologies from day zero, where you can build in a biomarker strategy, so that when you actually do make your clinical plan, you will be getting something which is clinically relevant from your phase 1 trial. It might be understanding that, for example, some part of biology is not very well understood from the get-go, and you might want to invest into very early stages into looking at mechanism of action and doing very basic research. And in that case, also doing some translational research and spending the time in developing the right animal model, because then you will be getting data that is going to be something that will help you later on in the clinic. It also means becoming more capital efficient when you invest in your small startup. This is something that the incubator wants to do. You want to spend less money and less time to make sure that you are able to manage the only risk that you can really know how to manage, and that is the execution of the work plan to test your hypothesis. You need to be able to ask the right questions so that you will get unequivocal answers if your technology is not correct. You want to have those answers quickly and cheaply. And that is innovation. Did you try innovation?
Yeah. My innovation is a completely different area. One of the biggest challenges I think we're facing in this country, many other countries, when it comes to healthcare costs and quality, is the fact that the doctors don't have electronic medical record. So you can go to 5 doctors and they'll have different information on the same patient. And to me, one of the key innovations is not the next generation of drug. It's not going to help. But if we could get doctors to install an electronic medical record in their office so that they can look at the same data as their colleague down the road who's seeing the same patient, that's a real cost saver and will improve quality of care. So that's the kinds of things that I think we need to focus on, not necessarily the next generation of a pharma product or medical device. I understand, and I don't want to be too controversial, but we need to give practitioners the tools they need to run a better business and they can provide better clinical care. And it may not always be breaking edge technology. Sometimes it's very basic tools to help them get through the day more efficiently.
And I think there is a trend, and of course governmental support program to become electronically all over practices in their support and CMS cost associated in using or not using the user and all this initiative. Israel, by the way, the HMOs have some kind of EMR and personal identity record for more than 20 years now. So,
yes.
So it's really more common, and that's why it costs, one of the reasons it costs for healthcare per capita is about a third of 25% of the cost in the US, and still the life expectancy is longer than the US. So I guess.
But my point here is that technology breakthrough is important. But it's not necessarily the best way to deal with healthcare challenges. There's some basic issues that need to be dealt with. More preventative care. Make it easier for the doctor to deliver preventative care types of programs. These are the things that will make a bigger difference than perhaps some major breakthrough on a drug that impacts the wealthy. So I think we should be thinking of solutions, not necessarily technology.
Okay, question to you, because I believe that Simone and Stein gave some flavor of how they commercialize what they believe they can help do different modes for commercialization. Does Boston has any kind of programs or plan or early stage investment that are different than buying a company after it's got certain proof? What kind of innovation cultivation mechanism we have in Boston?
Oh yeah, sure. And first, there is never certain proof, and actually it's very rare to buy a company. For us, after they've actually gone through and gotten full FDA approval, much more typically will come in at an earlier stage where they're there's still something at risk. And part of that gets into why would anyone want to partner with us, right? And what do we bring to the table when a startup's already got a device and has already done some of the feasibility work? And part of what we bring down the road is the scale-up operations, manufacturing, as well as sales force. But also part of what we bring is the engine, the clinical strategy, and regulatory strategy. So unusual for us to wait by someone else. But then we can go back earlier to make some early stage investments as well, and sort of say we sort of run the whole gamut from early stage to companies that are into feasibility and that are getting ready to launch in the U.S.
We have about 10 seconds left, so I believe that and I will finish in time. So the takeout is innovation is not only the best cutting-edge technology, but also affordable care, as the word that we heard this morning. And lower cost device is simpler to be used. And also, other than the United States, there is another country called OUS, so we need to think about this country as well, and not only about US. So thank you so much.
Obviously, this is a critical space, but it's even more poignant than it might appear, not only because of the aging of our societies, but demographically, you look at places like China, that 10, 15 years from now will have an extraordinarily complicated demographic profile, and healthcare, it must be solved. And the other thing I'll point out is Dr. Stein and I met in Israel last year at this event on a panel together, and as well, Beth Comstock was on the panel that will be coming up to the stage in a few minutes, met there. There are a number of other people here, James Snook from Starbucks, Takeda-san from Japan. We met on this trip with Dean Klein and his team, the landmark team in Israel, and it was inspiring to all of us. Most of us were first-timers. We need to get people there because they really don't get it from just reading a book. And so next year, the Technology Innovation Network is going to take a team to Israel with Zeev's help and Yiz Applebaum, who's, I don't know if Yiz is still here, but was a wonderful fellow and advocate for the country of Israel. And my colleagues Mike Lippitz and Paul Eppner are leading that effort for us. So thanks a lot.